Welcome to the Deep Dive. In this deep dive, we're taking a deep look at a really interesting stack of sources you sent in, covering everything from the nuts and bolts of building thriving online communities to the fascinating, sometimes uncomfortable world of humor specifically, the kind of jokes that are a little in the know.
That's right. These sources give us a lot to explore about what it fundamentally means to be part of a specific group, whether that group exists primarily online or, is bound together by shared understanding and inside jokes.
Yeah.
It's about how that shared, often very specific knowledge creates connection, identity, and meaning. We're really diving into the power and the psychology of the niche.
Our mission for this deep dive: to meticulously unpack these sources, extract the most compelling insights, and truly understand why that drive to connect with others who share your specific, sometimes obscure interests, or even just a shared, sometimes dubious sense of humor is such a fundamental and powerful human force. Let's jump right in. So let's start by really unpacking this idea of the niche itself, particularly in the context of community. Our sources, especially the Better Mode article, strongly emphasize how, in our current, hyper-connected, often overwhelming digital world, people aren't just looking to passively participate in vast, general platforms.
No, not at all.
There's a really powerful craving for deeper connection, a sense of true belonging, and a feeling of purpose within smaller, more specific groups. That's like a gravitational pull away from the endless, noisy stream of the mainstream and towards the focus, the particular, the place where you feel genuinely seen.
Exactly. The Better Mode source defines these as niche communities, small, tightly knit groups that coalesce around common interests, shared values, emerging trends, or specific lifestyles. What's crucial is the distinction the source makes. This isn't merely about niche marketing in a transactional sense. It's fundamentally about building trust, cultivating robust, lasting relationships, and establishing a shared identity, whether that's with customers, members, or just fellow enthusiasts.
So it's deeper than just selling something.
Much deeper. The inherent value isn't derived from a simple exchange or a fleeting interaction, but from the ongoing conversation, the mutual support, and the palpable sense of belonging that develops over time.
And the source gives some really compelling examples of brands that have absolutely nailed this, transforming customers into genuine community members. They highlight companies like Lego and Sephora, which have built these incredibly successful niche communities.
Yeah, those are great examples.
Think about it. For Lego, it's not just about buying bricks. It's about sharing creations, discussing techniques, connecting with other adult fans of Lego avals, right? For Sephora, it's a space for beauty enthusiasts to swap tips, ask questions, and share their passion. In these spaces, customers feel genuinely seen, authentically heard, and deeply valued by the brand and by each other.
Exactly. And the Better Mode source frames this as a strategic approach to engage the few to influence many.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, effectively taking those most passionate, most dedicated consumers and empowering them to become enthusiastic brand advocates, sources of invaluable feedback, and even collaborative partners in co-creating the brand's future.
Wow, so they become part of the process.
Precisely. It's a fundamental shift in how brands interact with their audience, moving from just broadcasting at them to a more participatory model facilitated by the brand itself.
This level of focused, deep engagement stands in stark contrast to the experience users often have on the massive, general-purpose social networks we all use daily, platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or X.
Oh, absolutely. The Better Mode source points out that while these platforms boast colossal user bases, often reaching into the hundreds of millions or even billions, their sheer, undifferentiated size actually becomes a significant obstacle.
How so?
Well, for users trying to find and genuinely engage with truly like-minded groups, you just get lost in the overwhelming volume of digital noise, the endless scroll of irrelevant videos, the ubiquitous advertising, the suggested content that rarely hits the mark.
Right, the algorithm serves itself, not necessarily you finding your group.
Exactly. It becomes a real struggle to locate, join, and meaningfully participate in valuable conversations.
It feels like shouting into a void, doesn't it? So, while platforms like Facebook recognize this need for group connection and launched features like Facebook Groups, the Better Mode source makes a strong case that they fall short.
They really do, especially when viewed through the lens of building a dedicated, robust niche community.
What are the main issues?
Well, the core issue is their lack of specific, nuanced functionality designed for community building. For instance, you can't easily create separate, distinct spaces within a single Facebook group for different types of discussions or activities. Everything tends to get lumped together.
Yeah, it's all just one feed.
Right. And you certainly can't embed that group seamlessly onto your own website to keep the community experience integrated with your brand or your platform's overall ecosystem.
And the branding.
You completely lose the ability to customize the look and feel of the space to match your brand identity or the community's specific theme, which is vital for creating a sense of place.
Definitely. And we can't overlook the algorithmic dynamics, which the Better Mode source highlights as a significant, often detrimental, roadblock.
That's a huge one. Facebook's core business priority is keeping users engaged within the main app for as long as possible, maximizing ad views across the platform.
So your group's content might get buried.
Exactly. This means the algorithm may not consistently show group members updates or valuable content from the specific group they joined, even if they desperately want to see it. This directly undermines the very engagement rate you're trying to build.
And the distractions.
Oh, yeah. As the source explicitly notes, these platforms are inherently designed to be full of distractions, constant notifications, personal messages, an unending stream of unrelated content constantly pulling attention away from the specific group discussion.
But perhaps the most critical warning the source delivers about building your community solely on a third-party social network is the stark reality that platforms like Facebook actively promote competing niche communities to your users.
That's terrifying if you're trying to build something.
Right. You've likely seen it yourself, sections suggesting similar groups you might like. Imagine investing significant time, effort, and resources into cultivating a dedicated group for your most passionate audience, nurturing those relationships only for the very platform you're using to subtly, or not so subtly, redirect your hard-earned members elsewhere.
It's a powerful and frankly concerning reminder of the fundamental lack of control you have over your audience and your community when you build it on rented land, as they say.
This lack of control and the inherent limitations lead directly to a crucial point made by the Better Mode source about the profound benefits of building a community on dedicated niche community platforms.
Right. Unlike general social networks that aim to be everything to everyone, these platforms are designed from the ground up to connect a small, highly targeted audience.
Focus is key.
Absolutely. Their fundamental focus is on building unique, specific value for that particular group rather than simply maximizing the time users spend scrolling through endless content. And critically, they are structured to display relevant content and conversations front and center.
So less noise.
Much less noise. Free from the constant stream of irrelevant ads, clickbait videos, and personal updates that plague social media feeds.
And the benefits for brands, organizations, or even just individuals who invest in building these dedicated niche spaces are significant and multifaceted, going far beyond simple marketing. First, they are incredibly effective at establishing stronger relationships.
Oh, so?
Well, this isn't just about the brand broadcasting messages at customers. It creates a two-way street, allowing for connection on a much deeper, more individual level than typical broad marketing efforts like blogging, social media posting, or paid ads can achieve.
Right, it's more personal.
Exactly. And crucially, it also fosters relationships between community members. People connect with each other, sharing knowledge, offering support, and forming bonds independent of the brand itself, creating a self-sustaining ecosystem of shared interests and mutual support.
That's a really important point. Another key benefit highlighted is building authority. By actively participating, leading discussions, sharing valuable insights.
But not being too salesy, right?
Right, that's the fine line. Not being overly promotional, showcasing expertise within that specific niche, a brand or individual can significantly increase their credibility and brand awareness among a highly relevant and engaged audience.
So people see you as the expert.
Precisely. People join because they are interested in the topic. And by facilitating valuable interactions and providing expertise around that topic, the brand naturally becomes a trusted authority figure in that space, not just a provider of goods or services.
Access to a targeted audience is, of course, a massive and obvious advantage. When you build a niche community focused on a specific interest, customer persona, or industry, you have direct, unfettered access to potential customers, leads, or just incredibly passionate individuals.
But the source points out that the benefits extend far beyond just sales or acquisition. You gain unrivaled first-hand insight into your audience's real-world challenges, their evolving needs, their frustrations, and their goals.
Like market research on tap.
Exactly. The Better Mode article gives the fantastic example of Condo Control, a property management software company, using their dedicated community specifically for beta testing new product updates and collecting direct, unfiltered feedback from their users.
That's smart.
Yeah. Finding testers or gathering feedback becomes as simple as posting a question or an invitation in their community space rather than sending out mass emails that might get ignored.
This leads directly into what the source flags as a critical point.
Yeah.
More data control. The Better Mode article issues a major warning about the inherent risks of building your audience or community solely on third-party social networks.
Uh-oh. What's the warning?
They reference the historical trajectory of Facebook business pages. Remember how brands were initially strongly encouraged by Facebook to invest heavily in building large audiences through organic posts and engagement?
Vaguely, yeah.
Well, then Facebook later drastically cut the organic reach of those pages, effectively forcing brands to pay for visibility to the very audiences they had built.
Ouch. So they built the audience, then had to pay to reach them.
Exactly. The stark lesson, as the source eloquently puts it, is if you don't own your data and your direct connection with your audience, which you do on a dedicated platform you control, that access and connection can be diminished or even taken away at any moment.
Leaving you high and dry.
Pretty much.
Oh.
Often forcing you into expensive paid advertising to reach the people who already wanted to hear from you. Building out a platform you control ensures you always have a direct, unmediated line to your targeted audience.
Access to user-generated content, UGC, is presented as a particularly powerful and valuable outcome of a thriving niche community. These spaces naturally become incredibly rich. Organic libraries of information created by the members themselves, questions asked, answers provided, tips shared, experiences recounted, solutions debated.
So the community creates its own value.
Absolutely. The source suggests this content can be leveraged in numerous strategic ways, creating what they describe as the community flywheel, a virtuous cycle of content creation and value.
Flywheel. How does that work?
Well, this UGC can be indexed by search engines, improving your SEO, and driving organic traffic by capturing long-tail search queries where people are asking the exact questions your community members are discussing.
Okay, so SEO benefits.
Big time. It can also be used to populate valuable Q&As on product pages, much like how Amazon incorporates customer questions and answers, directly addressing potential buyer concerns.
It's not like an FAQ, but organic.
Exactly. And it can integrate common support queries and their solutions into a public knowledge base, empowering users to help themselves and reducing the burden on your support team.
That's huge for efficiency. And finally, building a strong, vibrant niche community provides a significant advantage in building a competitive moat.
A moat, like protection.
Yeah. The source argues compellingly that while product features, pricing models, and even brilliant ideas can often be copied relatively easily by competitors, the deep personal relationships, the strong sense of belonging, and the shared identity that are built within a thriving niche community are fundamentally much, much harder to replicate or steal.
The human element.
Precisely. This human element, the network effect of connected individuals who trust each other and the community, creates a unique, sticky, and highly defensible advantage for the brand or organization that successfully fosters it.
Shifting gears slightly, but staying very much on the realm of the niche and shared understanding, the Reddit source about niche subreddits provides a perfect, often hilarious illustration of the user side of this equation.
Oh, I love Reddit niches.
Me too. It shows the sheer human drive to find others who share an incredibly specific interest, no matter how bizarre it might seem to outsiders. This is where people are seeking out communities for things like, and I love these examples from the source, canned sardines.
Canned sardines, really, an entire subreddit.
Yes, an entire community dedicated to canned sardines. Or collectors of uranium glass, which glows under UV light.
Okay, that's pretty cool, actually.
Isn't it? Subreddits dedicated to pictures of squirrels eating pizza.
Okay, now that's just amazing.
Or fans of unbelievably obscure media, niche hobbies, or forgotten video games. These communities wouldn't likely exist in any meaningful way in the physical world. You'd struggle to find more than a handful of people in your town equally obsessed with uranium glass.
True. Geography is limiting.
But they thrive online precisely because the internet allows for the aggregation of small numbers of people with highly specific interests from across the globe.
That Reddit discussion is a goldmine for understanding how unique and sometimes wonderfully strange these online niches can be. The examples are just fantastic. An entire subreddit devoted solely to pictures of messy rooms called Our Neckbeard Nests.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Which, despite the name, seems to be more about documenting a particular subculture's living spaces. Or artisan videos, communities dedicated to watching incredibly slow, detailed videos of skilled craftspeople working.
Yeah, like the process itself is the point.
Exactly. Where the focus isn't on speed or explanation, but on the process itself. These examples provide undeniable proof that if you have a specific, even peculiar passion, there is almost certainly a niche online space for it, fostering connections, shared understanding, and a sense of belonging that simply wouldn't be possible otherwise.
So we see this clear, strong drive from both sides. From the brand or organizer who sees the value in deeper engagement and loyalty within a focused group, and from the user who is actively seeking belonging, connection, and genuine interaction with others who share their very specific interests or identity.
And the Better Mode source, with its practical, step-by-step guidance for creating one of these thriving niche communities, really underscores that while the drive is organic, building a successful community is a deliberate, strategic, and often quite detailed process. It's not just throwing up a forum and hoping for the best.
Absolutely. They lay it out very clearly, starting with step one. Decide on your target audience and what your community will be about. This isn't a trivial step. It involves finding that crucial strategic balance, defining a focus that isn't so broad it lacks identity, but also not so narrow that it limits potential growth.
Finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. They note that platforms like Better Mode offer analytics tools to help refine this focus and identify underserved niche opportunities. Step two is straightforward but critical. Choose a platform.
And they push for dedicated platforms again here.
Strongly. Again, emphasizing that dedicated platforms built for community offer essential features like customization, branding control, and data ownership that general social media or chat apps fundamentally lack. You can seamlessly embed it on your own website, control SEO indexing of the content, and ensure the experience is on brand.
Step 3 is set up your community, which goes beyond just picking a name. It means thoughtfully defining clear rules and guidelines to shape behavior and interaction.
Which is so important for setting the tone.
Totally. Creating distinct discussion spaces or channels for different topics or activities, and crucially, adding initial content or starting conversations to get things flowing and provide examples of the desired interaction. Better Mode, for instance, provides tools like customizable content blocks and layout options to help shape the space.
Step 4 is incredibly insightful. Start with a small, dedicated audience of early advocates or founding members. These aren't just random users. They are the most passionate few who can help set the tone, model desired behavior, and drive initial engagement.
Like seeding the community.
Precisely. Making the community welcoming and active from the start and more attractive as it grows. Features like leaderboards or member directories, which Better Mode offers, can help identify and empower these key early contributors.
Step 5 focuses on building an effective onboarding experience. This is absolutely vital for member retention and ensuring new users become active participants. It's about guiding them through introductions, making sure they understand the guidelines.
Helping them find their feet.
Exactly. Helping them navigate the different spaces and perhaps providing initial content or prompts to get them involved. Better Mode allows for extensive customization here, including automated welcome messages and guided tours to ease new users in.
Step 6 is to promote the community once you have that initial core group and activity. This involves leveraging your existing channels like social media, email lists, or even paid advertising.
Getting the word out.
Yep. Platforms like Better Mode often offer referral programs and integrations that can incentivize existing members to invite new ones, helping the community grow organically through word of mouth.
And finally, step 7, and perhaps the most ongoing, is always look for ways to grow and engage. Building a community isn't a set-it-and-forget-it task, is it?
Definitely not. It requires a hands-on approach from moderators and organizers, actively participating in discussions, sparking new conversations, potentially hosting virtual events like Q&As, webinars, or workshops.
Keeping it fresh.
Exactly, and consistently providing valuable content. Better Mode facilitates this with features like event management, live chat tools, and crucially, analytics dashboards to track engagement, identify trending topics, and gather feedback to continuously improve the community experience.
This detailed, almost blueprint-like guide demonstrates that building a thriving niche community is a deliberate, ongoing process, leveraging the power of shared interests and dedicated space to create deep, lasting connections and high levels of engagement. But now let's pivot slightly. Let's talk about the less formal, sometimes spontaneous ways groups connect through shared inside knowledge, the world of esoteric humor.
This connects directly to our sources on humor and in-jokes, because it's another fundamental way niche groups define themselves and bond. The Wikipedia definition is wonderfully concise and gets right to the heart of it. An in-joke is humor that is understandable only to members of a specific in-group.
Only them.
Right. It's explicitly defined as esoteric, a word we'll come back to, meaning it requires a specific, often non-obvious awareness of the circumstances, history, or context behind the joke. It's not meant for the general public. Its very nature relies on the exclusivity of the initiated.
That feeling of being in on it is incredibly powerful, isn't it? The Psychology Today source frames this beautifully and provides the psychological context. It calls inside jokes private landmarks in a shared landscape.
I love that phrase.
Me too. Little markers that only make sense to those who've traveled that landscape together. They're described as psychological glue, not just random funny moments, but specific, often silly references that become shorthand for shared experiences and time spent together.
And they serve a crucial function. They reinforce the boundaries of the group. You either get it or you don't, and perhaps more importantly, they actively invite you deeper into that shared identity. The source really emphasizes how they make you feel genuinely seen, understood, and validated within that specific group.
And Psychology Today goes further, exploring the science behind why these seemingly simple references have such a profound and positive impact on group dynamics and individual well-being. First, and perhaps most fundamentally, they trigger the brain's belonging response.
How does that work?
Well, when you hear a shared reference and laugh because you get it, it sparks immediate recognition and a sense of shared history. This directly taps into the fundamental human need to belong, which is deeply wired into us.
Ah, okay.
That recognition and shared laughter light up the brain's reward system, releasing feel-good chemicals and creating a tangible, almost physical sense of social safety, warmth, and affirmation. It's a biological reinforcement of your connection to that group.
Wow.
Second, they strengthen group identity, acting as active rather than passive reinforcers of shared experience. Shared laughter, especially at a shared memory or inside reference, is a powerful bonding agent.
It reminds you you're part of something. Exactly. It serves as a constant, lighthearted reminder of what the members have collectively experienced together, the challenges they've overcome, the ridiculous situations they've navigated, the triumphs they've celebrated.
And the source mentioned high-stress jobs.
Right. The source notes that inside jokes are particularly prevalent and seem to thrive in high-stress professions like nursing, teaching, or emergency services. In these contexts, they function as a vital form of resilience, a way for groups to cope with difficult, intense shared experiences through a shared language of humor.
Making the unbearable a bit more bearable.
Precisely, acknowledging them through laughter. And third, the presence and use of in-jokes signals psychological safety.
Safety. How?
The source argues that sharing vulnerable humor, the kind that often sparks enduring inside jokes, requires a significant level of trust within the group. Environments where in-jokes are abundant and easily shared are strong indicators of places where people feel genuinely free to speak up, to take interpersonal risks, to be their authentic, sometimes silly selves, without fear of judgment or ridicule.
So the laughter means it's okay here.
Exactly. Laughter stemming from an in-joke becomes a powerful, almost instantaneous shorthand, a nonverbal signal that says, you're safe here, you are one of us, you belong.
This psychological analysis resonates strongly with the philosophical perspective offered in the Wikipedia source. It describes in-jokes as cryptic allusions to shared common ground that function essentially as selective triggers.
Selective triggers? Yeah.
Only those who truly share that specific history, that particular context, that common ground, are capable of responding appropriately with understanding, with laughter, with recognition. This act demonstrates and confirms their membership in the group.
Right.
The source explicitly states that in-jokes help to build community, and sometimes, precisely because of their nature, they define and even exclude outsiders. Part of their inherent power and appeal for the in-group is the very knowledge that others don't understand.
The exclusivity is part of the point.
Exactly. They can even function as a layer of subtext, adding layers of meaning and nuance to conversations that only the initiated perceive.
The Florida Philosophical Review source, in its broader discussion of different types of jokes and the nature of humor itself, adds another crucial layer to understanding why in-jokes work and why humor is so tied to specific groups. It argues compellingly that humor, at its core, is fundamentally conditional.
Conditional, meaning it depends.
Yes. All jokes, regardless of their topic, complexity, or style, have inherent conditional requirements that must be met by the audience in order for the joke to land. These requirements include shared common knowledge, a similar background, fluency in the language.
Including slang and jargon.
Right. Shared cultural presuppositions, and sometimes even shared prejudices. The audience, according to this analysis, has to actively supply something, that missing piece of context, that specific frame of reference, that shared understanding, in order to get the point of the joke and find it funny.
This conditionality is absolutely key, and it's precisely what explains why humor is so incredibly subjective,
Huh.
so specific to a particular community, so generational, or, as we're discussing, so intensely niche-based.
Makes sense.
As the source puts it quite directly, and I think this is a powerful statement, we do not all share the same life experiences, the same frame of reference. Just like a certain type of popular music speaks most directly and powerfully to a specific demographic because it reflects their shared experiences and cultural references, jokes often only land with a particular audience that shares the necessary context.
Like the Elvis versus Sinatra example they use. Different generations, different contexts.
Exactly. Your dad might not get why Elvis was revolutionary, or vice versa with Sinatra. Their reactions to humor about them would be totally different.
And this is where the discussion, guided by the Florida Philosophical Review source, bravely delves into potentially uncomfortable, even controversial territory by analytically examining different types of jokes, including those some might find crude, rude, inappropriate, or even offensive.
Okay, so this is tricky ground.
It is, but the source takes a strictly analytical rather than a normative or judgmental stance here. It argues that any joke, regardless of how it might be judged ethically, morally, or in terms of taste, can be considered funny depending entirely on the specific tastes, background, and receptivity of the specific audience.
So it's separating is it funny from is it okay?
Precisely. It draws a critical distinction between whether a joke is funny, which it labels an epistemic question related to knowledge, understanding, and shared context, do you get it? And whether it is acceptable, correct, or ethical, which is a normative question related to standards, values, and social appropriateness, should that joke be told.
So the source's aim here is just to analyze the mechanism of humor and its conditionality, not to endorse or condemn any particular content. It's trying to understand how they manage to function as humor for some people or within certain groups.
Exactly. It discusses categories like dirty jokes, tasteless jokes, and ethnic jokes as examples to explore this conditionality and dependence on a specific audience with a specific frame of reference.
Okay, let's start with dirty jokes.
The source references folklorist Gershon Legman, who claimed this is, perhaps surprisingly, the most popular form of joke-telling across cultures and centuries.
Really? More popular than others.
Apparently so, according to Legman. He suggests they are rooted in fundamental human curiosity about sex, functioning as a way of overcoming fear, neurosis, and guilt associated with the topic, and a means of normalization for a subject that is often otherwise taboo.
So, breaking taboos.
Right. The source notes they can also be a way of flaunting authority, violating norms, expressing underlying rage or perversion, or even offering a form of vicarious pleasure.
And what about the language? Like swearing.
The source brings in insights from comedians like George Carlin and Louis Black, arguing that profane language is a tool. While good dirty jokes need good dirty language to deliver their impact, the comedy ultimately resides in the structure and insight of the joke itself, not just the swearing.
It's not funny just because it's crude.
Exactly. As Louis Black is famously quoted in the source saying, "When you're not delivering the goods, a good joke, all the fucks in the world won't save your ass." Even controversial humor needs comedic structure.
Then there's the legendary, infamous, The Aristocrats. The source calls this possibly the dirtiest single joke in the English language, with origins stretching back to vaudeville.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this one. Isn't it mostly told by comedians to other comedians?
That's right. Today, it exists largely as an insider's joke told among comedians, serving as an acid test of nerve, creativity, and performance skill. It has a very simple standard setup.
A family goes to a talent agent.
Right. And a very specific standard punchline. We call ourselves the Aristocrats. But the vast middle section is a completely blank canvas for the teller to improvise and insert the most outrageous, obscene, perverse, and taboo acts imaginable, aiming for maximum shock and awe.
So the humor is in the improvisation and the shock value.
Partly. The source notes that its humor might stem not just from the shock itself, but from its sheer audacious absurdity, its iconoclastic nature, turning a wholesome premise into something grotesque, and the performer's skill and nerve in delivering the outrageous material. It's even described as a dramatic farce.
For its niche audience of comedians, the humor is in pushing boundaries, the performance, and the shared knowledge of the joke's history and structure. It's very inside baseball.
Turning to ethnic jokes, the source discusses how these frequently evolve from a natural human tendency to categorize and compare different groups. Depending crucially on the tone and the relationship between the teller and the audience, they can range dramatically.
From playful to really offensive.
Exactly. From delightful observations to deeply dehumanizing stereotypes. They often play on recognized or perceived cultural traits. But critically, the source, citing folklorist James P. Leary, highlights the significant aspect. Much ethnic humor is actually self-generated within a group itself.
So groups make jokes about themselves.
Often, yes. This is often a response to experiences like migration, assimilation, or the ongoing experience of feeling like an outsider in the dominant culture. It allows these groups to be bicultural, holding on to traditions while navigating the present culture.
Interesting.
Self-deprecating jokes, like the classic Oli and Lena jokes or Jewish mother jokes discussed in the source, become a language of assimilation and integration, allowing group members to be simultaneously insiders within their own group and outsiders relative to the dominant culture.
So it's a coping mechanism in a way.
Could be. The source argues that these jokes, when viewed analytically, are often small anthropological essays, or folk tales, surprisingly revealing similarities and shared human experiences across groups more often than highlighting fundamental differences, helping to break down stereotypes and offering a form of communal comfort through shared self-directed humor.
The source even touches on the incredibly profound use of humor in the most extreme and horrific human situations, referencing Viktor Frankl's account of how humor functioned in Nazi concentration camps.
Wow. That's intense.
Extremely. In this context, humor was absolutely not about lighthearted fun. It was a desperate, fundamental survival mechanism, an act of profound psychological defiance against dehumanization. Frankl is quoted saying he would never have made it if I could not have laughed, even for brief moments.
How could they even find humor there?
It allowed prisoners for a fleeting time to rise above the horrific reality, to find moments of levity and make the utterly unbearable just a bit more psychologically livable. Jokes like ironically calling a sadistic guard a former bank president, or finding dark gallows humor in their terrible circumstances.
Like failed suicide attempts.
Right. They were described as ways to temporarily deny the terror, to assert their humanity and affirm their existence a defiant "I laugh, therefore I am" in the face of unimaginable suffering. It shows the deep, essential nature of shared understanding and finding humor, even in the most niche and terrible of shared experiences.
This examination of humor, even in its darkest forms, consistently brings us back to the power of shared understanding, shared context, and shared reference, the inherent conditionality that makes a joke land with a specific audience or within a specific group.
Definitely. The Mega64 Reddit thread, while much more lighthearted, provides a perfectly illustrative example of an online community built significantly, almost foundationally, on in-jokes.
Right, the video game guy.
Yeah. The original post and subsequent discussion describe how most of their long-running in-jokes are based on incredibly mundane things someone said 5, 10, or even 20 years ago. They require either long-term, dedicated engagement with their content over years, or needing to look up references on a fan-maintained wiki.
Because the origin is just normal.
Exactly. Because the backstories are, as described, pretty mundane and unexciting in a you-had-to-be-there sort of way. It's explicitly labeled Inside Baseball by one commenter, confirming that this principle of niche understanding built on a shared specific history applies broadly and fundamentally to online comedy and the communities that form around it.
And just a quick point from the D Academy Reddit thread, which, in asking about a specific game term, esoteric humor in D&D, contrasting it with the ancient concept of bodily humors, brings up the word esoteric itself in a way that neatly ties into our discussion of niche understanding.
What did they say?
One comment notes that if you explain an esoteric humor or reference, it ceases to be esoteric. It becomes exoteric, understandable to outsiders, and, in the context of the in-joke or niche reference, it doesn't count anymore for the in-group.
Ah, so explaining it ruins the magic in a way.
Exactly. This perfectly reinforces the idea that the very nature of esoteric or niche knowledge and understanding, especially as it functions in bonding and humor, lies in its exclusivity. It is defined as much, or perhaps even more, by who doesn't get it as it is by who does.
So what truly ties these seemingly disparate topics together, the strategic building of online niche communities and the spontaneous emergence and function of in-jokes and niche humor, is this fundamental, deeply ingrained human need for belonging, for connection, and for recognition.
They're both about finding your people.
Right. Both are found and amplified within specific shared contexts. Niche communities, whether physical or online, provide the structural space, the container, for that belonging to flourish. And in-jokes or niche humor are a powerful, organic, often unconscious form of communication, validation, and bonding that happens within those structures, reinforcing who is in and who is out.
Whether it's a brand meticulously and strategically building a community platform for its most passionate customers, or individuals spontaneously finding each other online because they both happen to collect uranium glass or enjoy pictures of squirrels eating pizza.
Which is still amazing.
It really is. The underlying goal, the fundamental driving force, is the same: to connect with others who get it, who understand the passion, who share the specific frame of reference, who recognize the history behind the inside joke, who validate that obscure interest.
And that potent sense of being gotten, of being truly understood and accepted by a specific few who share your particular world, is significantly amplified by shared esoteric understanding. Whether it's knowing the obscure, perhaps mundane backstory behind a silly inside joke from years ago, or understanding the technical or cultural references in a joke specific to a profession, a hobby, or cultural group.
It acts as a powerful validation.
Exactly. A validation of your shared experience, your specific interest, or your undeniable place within that group. It's a form of mutual recognition.
The Psychology Today piece really brings this point home beautifully in its conclusion. It calls shared weirdness, those specific, sometimes strange things that only you and your group understand or find funny, sacred.
Sacred weirdness. I like that.
Me too. It argues that some of the strongest, most meaningful connections in our lives aren't always forged solely in deep, heavy conversations or shared hardship, but often, surprisingly, come from moments of lightness, from laughing together at something completely ridiculous, something that makes no sense whatsoever to anyone outside the group.
Yeah, those shared silly moments can be incredibly bonding.
Totally. These moments, fueled by shared history, shared context, and those inside jokes, serve as pertinent reminders that you have been part of something specific, something unique, and that you belonged.
So, whether it's the brand meticulously investing in building its dedicated niche community platform to foster customer loyalty, the close-knit group of friends whose communication is peppered with seemingly nonsensical inside jokes that only they understand.
The online forum for an obscure hobby.
Right, where members share highly technical jargon and in-jokes, or even the stand-up comic telling the aristocrats to a room full of other comics who appreciate the historical and technical context. They are all, in their own distinct ways, leveraging the profound power of the niche, the esoteric, the in-group knowledge, and shared understanding.
To build connection, solidify identity, and foster deep, lasting engagement among a select few. This deep dive into the sources really underscores a powerful truth. While we navigate a massive, interconnected digital world, the fundamental human pull towards smaller, more specific groups and shared understanding remains incredibly strong, perhaps even stronger than ever.
It really does, from fostering fierce brand loyalty that goes beyond transactions to helping individuals survive unimaginable hardship by finding moments of levity through shared dark humor. That potent sense of being in on it with a select few holds significant and multifaceted power in our lives.
It challenges the conventional idea that meaningful connection only happens on a massive scale or through broad, general interactions. The most profound and resilient bonds are often forged in these highly specific, sometimes deliberately exclusive niche spaces.
Built not just on shared values, interests, or experiences, but often on shared, sometimes strange, inside knowledge or a sense of humor that outsiders simply wouldn't understand or appreciate.
And you, navigating your own interests and connections in the world, whether online or off, are undoubtedly participating in these niche communities and sharing in inside jokes more than you might even consciously realize.
It's almost unavoidable, isn't it? The sources provide so much compelling evidence and analysis regarding why these specific esoteric connections matter so much for our sense of self, our psychological safety, and our fundamental need for belonging.
So here's a final thought for you to really mull over, drawn directly from the insights we've unpacked. If shared inside jokes are such a powerful signal of psychological safety and belonging within a group, what might the absence of in-jokes or a consistent inability for them to form naturally tell us about the psychological safety, the shared history, and the fundamental cohesion of that group?